Good morning, everyone. I'm Congressman Torres, and I'm honored to be joined by Israel's Special Envoy for Combating Anti-Semitism and a former member of the Knesset, Michal Cotler-Wunsch. We're joined by members of the Jewish community here in Riverdale, Rabbi Benny Krause of SAR Academy, Rabbi David Zirkin of the Riverdale Jewish Center, as well as Randy Matos, who's the Chief of Staff for Assembly Member Jeff Didowitz. The Jewish community here in Riverdale and elsewhere in New York City, elsewhere in the world, is in a state of deep mourning. Not since 9/11 have I seen such profound grief and trauma and pain in the hearts of my fellow Americans. And so we're here to make it crystal clear that we stand in solidarity with the Jewish diaspora, and we stand in solidarity with Israel as a Jewish state. October 7th is a day that will live in infamy as the deadliest terrorist attack on Israel in the history of the Jewish state. It is the deadliest massacre of Jews since the time of the Holocaust. Thousands of Israelis were murdered and maimed and raped and tortured and abducted as hostages. 260 young Israelis were gunned down at a musical festival. 10% of a whole town, was massacred. Babies were butchered and beheaded and burned alive. Hamas's terrorist attack on Israel is so barbaric that it is an assault on civilization itself. It is an assault on humanity itself. And these crimes against humanity cannot be ignored and cannot go unpunished. Hamas must be brought to justice. We must do to Hamas what we did to Al-Qaeda and ISIS in the 21st century and what we did to the Nazis in the 20th century. I have been deeply distressed by much of the public response to the unprecedented terrorism in Israel. The New York City Democratic Socialists of America held a rally glorifying the terrorism of Hamas as resistance, calling for the destruction of Israel in the wake of the deadliest attack on Israel in its history. There are public officials and college and university presidents who could not even bring themselves to condemn Hamas. There were people who blamed the victims of terrorism rather than the terrorists themselves. And if we as a society cannot bring ourselves to condemn the cold-blooded murder of Israeli children and civilians, then what have we become? What does it reveal about the depth of anti-Semitism in the American soul? There needs to be a reckoning with anti-Semitism on college campuses, in social media, in politics, in every aspect of American life. It is a deep rot that has to be uprooted. The United States and Israel have a special relationship. These two countries are home to almost all of the world's Jewish population. There is a special, indeed an indispensable relationship between our two countries. And for the United States, Israel is not simply a friend. To many of us, Israel is family. The Jewish community has loved ones who have suffered loss in Israel, who have been called up for reserve duty, whose lives are at risk. And so we stand inextricably together as one. We will prevail as one. And we stand with Israel's right to defend itself. There were those who are calling for an immediate ceasefire. No one expected the United States to enter into a ceasefire with the Empire of Japan when 2,400 Americans were murdered in Pearl Harbor. No one expected the United States to enter into a ceasefire with Al-Qaeda or the Taliban when 3,000 Americans were murdered here in New York City on 9/11. If you and your family were the target of thousands of rockets, if your homes and communities were invaded, if your loved ones were murdered and maimed and tortured and abducted, what would you expect your government to do? You would expect your government to defend you, because that is what governments do. And those who insist that Israel should do nothing in the face of the deadliest terrorist attack are holding the Jewish state to a dangerous double standard that no other country, including the United States, would ever impose on itself. Every country has the right to defend its people from foreign invasion and from terrorism. And so I stand unequivocally for Israel's right to defend itself and to overthrow Hamas, which is a threat not only to the Jewish state, but to humanity and civilization. The world has historically failed the Jewish community. There is a long and ugly history of violent and genocidal anti-Semitism. Pogroms and crusades and inquisitions and ethnic cleansing and genocide. The world's failure to prevent the Holocaust was the moral catastrophe of the 20th century. And the lesson learned from the Holocaust is that we must never fail the Jewish community again. And a fundamental part of never failing again is supporting the survival and security and success of Israel as a Jewish state. So that is the lesson of history that I have taken to heart as the congressman of Riverdale and as the congressman of what I think is the greatest country on earth. And so we're here to tell you, Special Envoy, Ambassador, that Riverdale stands with you, the United States of America stands with you, and that there's no doubt in my mind that we will prevail.